How's it going, people? Welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to answer a question that I've been getting quite a lot recently. Is it a good idea to invest in cars? And therefore, more importantly, can you get rich by investing in cars? Now, the short answer to the first question is maybe, possibly, depending on your situation. And the answer to the second question is basically no. It's highly difficult to become rich as a result of investing in cars unless you already have a lot of money, or you are very, very, very clever, or you just have a crystal ball, or you have some kind of time machine. Something like that is the only way you're going to get really genuinely rich off of cars. It's going to take a very long time. So I'm very sorry if you clicked on this video thinking to yourself, yes, I'm about to make absolute stacks off of cars. But in this video, I'm going to explain why it's so difficult to make a lot of money off of investing into cars, why there are probably better investments, but why you potentially could invest in cars depending on your financial situation. And by investing in a car, I don't mean just buying a car, I mean buying a car with the intention of it going up in value. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you do, please do hit the like button, subscribe as well if you're new. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Recently, I've made a bunch of videos on cheap cars that are going up in value, and while yes, it is the case that these cars are and have been going up in value over the last sort of 10 years or so, generally they've gone up in value by no more than sort of £5,000 to £10,000, or alternatively put, maybe 10 to 20%. So for example, the Z4M, which I was after buying back in 2016, it had hit around about £10,000 at the lowest end by that point in coupe spec. Fast forward to 2021, around 5 years later, you're looking at around £14,000 at the bottom end for very high mileage examples. If we assume that 10 grand was the bottom end back then and that 14 grand is the bottom end right now, then the car has gone up by 40%. It's gone up by £4,000. Now in isolation, that is actually really good. A 40% return on investment is not bad at all. And if we take that £4,000 and we divide it by the number of years, so that's 5 years, you have made £800 a year on that car just in terms of its value, not including ownership costs and all that other kind of stuff that we'll get onto, but in terms of just the value of the car, it's gone up by £800 a year. Now that's not bad for only a car as nice as the Z4M, but let's say you put that £10,000 instead exclusively into the S&P 500 index. Right now you would have £20,000, so you'd have 6 grand more than you would have by selling the Z4M. And that is because the S&P 500 index has just over doubled in value over the last 5 years in the same space of time that you've had that Z4M for. Now I know this is only one example, but I'm using it because I think the Z4M is a really good example of a car that has gone up in value in the past and will probably continue to go up in value in the future, and it's done so at a very good rate. 40% return is a good rate, particularly on a car that has a BMW badge on it rather than a Ferrari or an Aston Martin or one of those kinds of badges on it. And I say that because the Z4M is slightly more affordable to a wider market than cars that have a Ferrari or Aston Martin badge, it makes it a genuine investment piece for more people. If we compare the same index of S&P 500 to the Ferrari 250 GTO between 1980 and 2021, then yes, you will see that the Ferrari 250 GTO is just absolutely insane in terms of its value in comparison. It's gone from $190,000 in 1980 to $70 million in 2018, the last time it sold, 368 times its value. In comparison, the S&P 500 index is 36 times the amount it was back in 1980. But the difference is, in 1980 you could have put $10 on the S&P 500 index, whereas you would have had to have had $190,000 in order to buy that 250 GTO, which adjusted for inflation is around about $610,000 in today's money, suggesting that you would have had to have been rich in the first place to have bought the 250 GTO. It didn't make you rich, it made you a lot richer, but it didn't make you rich. And it did so over an extended period of time, so it's not a get rich quick kind of scheme either. Now there are some cars at the cheaper end of the spectrum that do seem to appreciate better than the stock market. For example, the Volvo P1800 went up by 283% between 2010 and 2020. Similarly, the Mazda RX-7 went up by 239% in that time. But with those lower values also comes generally lower returns overall. None of those cars would have made you rich unless you had many of them. It is just generally very difficult to find a car that you could buy, for example, for £5,000 that in 10, 20, 30 years time is going to be worth £5 million. It's just wishful thinking. And here's what makes investing in a car even worse in terms of returns. You have to keep that car maintained and up to a good scratch until you decide to sell it. Now that should sound pretty simple. What I mean by that is actually in the UK, let's say you want to garage your car, keep it out from the rain so it doesn't rust, and you want to just keep it running every so often and make sure that the car is in tip-top condition going forwards. That requires you to have in the first place a garage or a space to store that car in a dry condition. That means you needed money in the first place to be able to afford the house that had the garage. If you can't dry store the car, then you risk the car getting rusty or having any other kind of problems as a result of being outside, like being crashed into or whatever. Also, you incur the additional fees if the car's not parked on private land, that it has to be taxed, MOT'd, insured, all that kind of stuff. According to the RAC, not including tax and insurance, but just MOT and maintenance, you're looking at around about £472 per year to maintain a used car. And that's on average, by the way. So ignoring tax and insurance, and let's assume that we haven't driven the Z4M, we've just MOT'd and maintained it, suddenly that £800 every year for the last 5 years becomes £328 every year. Let's add petrol onto that. So Go Compare suggests that on average, people spend around about £1,042 per year on petrol for their cars. Of course, you've bought this Z4M as an investment piece, so you haven't driven it all the time. You've just driven it kind of every so often, maybe a quarter of the amount of time that you've driven your normal car. Let's assume then as a quarter you spent only £250 in that year on petrol for that car. Already you are very close to negative on this car. Let's add car insurance onto that. As an adult, the average price is around about £471 a year, so suddenly you are very much in the negative on your investment. I could really go on here, but I think you're starting to see the picture. Actually investing in and making money on a car as opposed to just having it as an expense is very difficult to do. When you compare that to investing in stocks and shares, into ETFs, into crypto, into anything like that, there are no sort of additional charges on top to keep maintaining that. Unless you have like a platform fee or something like that, ultimately you're investing in it and then the value of it goes up and down and you're not paying more money to maintain it. When you invest your money into a car, that's not the end of your spending. You will probably continue to spend over the course of the time that you own that car. And if you are driving the car all the time, then you have to think about the risk involved with that, i.e. someone crashing into you, it breaking, adding more miles onto the car. There are so many different factors that you need to think about when it comes to investing in a car and maintaining it and keeping it for the longer term. And now this is why investing in a car is called a passion investment. If it wasn't already apparent, I absolutely love cars, and when I am a billionaire I will have a massive portfolio of investments, and some of those investments will indeed be cars. They act kind of like art pieces or wines or those kinds of things that you can invest into. You really like art, or you really like wine, or you really like cars, so you invest in nice expensive ones that no one else can have, and yes, suddenly you have a very rare collection full of stuff that is literally impossible to get a hold of, and then you can kind of dictate the value of it. But when you haven't got that kind of money, you have to be in it just for the passion. Try and be smart, try and choose a car that you think is going to go up in value, that you think is going to be worth something in the future, but ultimately buy it because you want it, you want to enjoy it however you enjoy it, whether that be sitting in your garage and looking at it or driving it around on the roads. When you do this, the return on investment equation for a car changes massively. It goes from being the amount that the car is worth minus the amount that you paid for the car minus the maintenance fees of the car to that exact same equation plus how much you've enjoyed the car, which kind of destroys the whole equation because it's hard to quantify that. And I literally actually did something like this at university where I explained how that kind of equation is entirely pointless, so I won't bore you with the details. But yes, if you can have value out of a car because you just like doing it, like owning it, like driving it, whatever it is, suddenly your investment is much better. I absolutely love my MX-5, and yes, it's going up in value, but I've spent way more money than I'll ever get back on that car, but I've had so much fun in it and I'll keep on having fun in it, and so for that reason it's a great return on investment for me. So will investing in a car make you rich? No, of course it won't, not unless you are tremendously lucky. But is it worth investing in a car? Maybe. It really depends on what you are going to derive from that investment. I really do hope you enjoyed this video. I definitely enjoyed making it. I love making videos on investing in cars. If you haven't already, go and check out my videos on cheap cars that are going up in value as we speak. And though yes, they might not make you money, they'll definitely make you a lot of fun. Do hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. I would really appreciate it. Subscribe as well if you're new. I'm trying to hit 100,000. Massive thank you to the patrons as always, and to you guys as well for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
Listen.